So, Chris, I don't know if you got a chance to look at all those movies that I was talking about. You probably haven't. That's fine. But not just the movies, but also TV shows from the 70s. I was thinking of all the shows where they just like throw people together, right? Like a lot of the cop buddy shows or detective shows or the comedies, right? Where they're like a fish out of water. These two people don't go together, but somehow they do. And friends become enemies and enemies become friends. And I'm not just talking about like the detective shows. There's like all kinds of examples of this. So I sent you like 3 different lists. You don't have to look at them all at the same time. I get it. Like you can't be looking at 7 different lists, but if at some point you could go through it and just get back to me on which ones you think are the coolest. I don't know if it's obvious to you, but I've had 3 Red Bulls. I'm actually starting to see colors. But what do you think?
I'm getting too old for this shit.
Prepare to be amazed as 2 men, legally classified as vintage, compete to recall pop culture nonsense from a time when parents smoked in grocery stores and Ronald McDonald roamed free, judged and scored by artificial intelligence. Chris and Jeff sift through the glorious wreckage of a gleefully neglected childhood, hoping to find meaning. Nice poll, because if we don't remember this crap, you know damn well someone's gonna try and reboot it and make it way worse. All right, well, exciting news. Episode 65 is here. It's happening right now. We are getting ever closer to 70. And I don't know what's going to happen on episode 70, but maybe it'll be an extravaganza. Maybe it will be multiple guests. Maybe
Maybe.
it'll be people you've never heard of, never seen, fun surprises. I don't know. Will there
Like
be
us.
any kind of surprises on this episode? Yeah, for sure. Every episode has some surprise. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? At least some little tidbit that
Some sort of Cracker Jack kind of, hey, this is cool. Look what's in the box kind of surprise. Wasn't expecting that. Or maybe you were, but yes.
I think that's a fair analogy. Cracker Jacks, right? It it's consistent. You know what you're getting, just like the podcast. And when you open up the prize and there's something special, you go, eh. I mean, it's not a bad prize, but
No, no,
you know,
it's a little sticky, it's a little crunchy, but hey, here we are, 65 of these. So yeah,
what
that's
was your just out of curiosity, thinking back on Cracker Jacks, what was your favorite prize? I know, and did you notice, Chris, that the evolution of Cracker Jacks, where when we were kids, the
mm-hmm.
prizes weren't too bad. Like there was actually some
Yeah.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
fun stuff in there. And then as it progressed and you got into like, God forbid, the late 80s or 90s, it was just like, here's a picture of something that was horribly printed out. Have fun with that. Like, what the fuck? What's up, Cracker Jacks?
No, I think my favorite there was okay, it was some kind of like fish. Do you remember this one?
I
And you
do. And it
put it
would
in the
curl
palm
up.
of your hand. Yes, and you could,
Yes.
like, ask a question and I forget. It either came with, like, a certain set of questions you were supposed to ask, or you could just ask, and it supposedly, like, if it flattened out or curled up, you were lying or something like that. That seems to be and it'd be like, "Are you in love?" And be like, "Oh, no, I'm not in love," and then it would, like, curl up, and then you're like, "Oh, who" something like that. I remember the fish
Yeah.
because it was, more than anything else, and every once in a while and I think there'd be like a compass maybe
Yeah.
or something that yes, to your point, something you could use, and I put those in air quotes like that,
Yeah.
like if you're out
Well,
lost in the woods, you're gonna pull out your Cracker Jack compass, to the point where that became a trope, right? It was like, "Where did you get that? A box of Cracker Jacks?" Right? So it became sort of like a cheap, vernacular for something that was, like, cheap and didn't really work, or, "Yeah, you got your degree from a box of Cracker Jacks," something like that to the
yeah.
point where but yes, we went from anticipation to major disappointment in a fairly short amount of time.
I,
But you could
I
say that about a lot of things in my life, I guess.
Yeah, and I will say that we lived in the, I would call it, if this was comic books, I would say you
Mhm.
and I lived in the silver age of Cracker Jacks. My brothers, who are, God bless their hearts, substantially older than me. Those guys grew up in the 50s. They were in
Uh-huh.
the golden age of
Golden
Cracker Jacks,
age.
where Chris, the things that were in that little package, the little prize, they were made out
Mhm.
of metal,
Mhm.
effing metal, right? Like if you had a whistle, it was made out of metal.
Right.
If there was a compass, it was probably a real compass that, you
Mhm.
guessed it, was made out of metal. We had similar fun toys, but we saw the progression into plastic, you know, and things like that. But then
Mhm.
again, the kids of the '90s, right? By the time you got to the He-Man generation, yeah, it's like Cracker Jacks was basically like, "Fuck you," go look at what other kids got. That's the best I can say. But yeah, we're not giving you anything. Do you know what the margin is on these things? Not great. Not great. Okay. We make like a penny on every box. So fuck
Yes.
you.
It was a maybe if you scored, I think, at that point toward the tail end, if you got a tattoo or something like that, that was just something that hopefully didn't, taint your skin or give you some sort of weird toxic poisoning, but
Speaking of which, and I know we're getting sidetracked again, but Chris, do you remember when the old world of tattoos would be, oh, I got a tattoo, maybe in Cracker Jacks, maybe in a cereal box, but it was the shitty version of a tattoo, right? Where you would add water and all it would do was bleed ink kind of onto your skin, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, that's not really Popeye's head. It just looks like a blue and green blur, like a blue and green smudge. By the way,
Uh-huh.
ironically, that's what all sailor tattoos look like after about 24 years. But
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's like you were really lucky if the ink transferred, and it usually looked like shit. But then, do you
Wow.
remember, Chris, the thing called Takatumi tattoos? Tack It To Me tattoos. And
Vaguely.
it was this huge breakthrough where you would wet the paper and you would let it sit,
Mhm.
and then you would carefully peel the paper off of your whatever area you're putting the tattoo on, and it looked perfect. And what it was a decal, a super
Mhm.
thin, almost like a model airplane decal. And oh my God, we thought that was the coolest thing. I'm like, dude, check it out. I got a real tattoo, right? That was a
Mhm.
huge deal back in the day. Did you ever use one of
I
those? The
remember
Tack It?
those. I
Yeah,
remember they
yeah.
still had those. I mean, I think your kids probably same thing. It was like, "Oh, yeah, this is," and then it really wouldn't come off. You had to use, like, rubbing alcohol to get it
Right,
off.
right.
So, no, that was definitely as far as fake toy tattoos came along, they definitely stepped it up, but again, if I can go back to a second to your point, yes, if you remember tattoos as a kid, like, remember and my dad didn't have any tattoos, but I remember, like, neighbor and yes, they were normally they had been in the somebody that was in World War II, right? We had this neighbor,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Jessen, who had, like, those exact, like, on the forearms, those kind of Popeye anchor tattoos, and the thing is those were put on, like, in the '40s, and by the '70s, they weren't looking great. I mean, they basically were faded, were all, like, just kind of just these masses of blue. You could kinda tell that they were what they used to be, but and then every once in a while, some guy would have, like, this, half naked lady or something, and you're like, "Wow, that really didn't age too well," and I think fortunately, tattoos, I don't know, again, don't have any tattoos, much bigger part of our culture now than they were even 20 years ago, definitely 30 years ago, but, man, those, those things, they did not hold up, so, but
No.
yeah, they did not hold up.
Yeah, your grandpa's like, "You see this one? Don't tell your grandma, but that's a lady that I met in Iwo Jima." And all you're seeing is this green and black blob, this
Uh-huh,
sort of
uh-huh.
smudge. It almost looks like, either he got punched in the arm and it's starting to heal, or it's
A
starting to go
bruise.
gangrene, like he's about to lose his arm, and you're like, "Okay, grandpa, if you say so. If that originally looked kind of like a woman, I wanna believe you.
Mhm.
What the fuck? You might wanna get that arm looked at, dude. Are you okay?"
Yes, hopefully you don't have tetanus or something, and, cause of death, 57-year-old tattoo that, yes, he got in Okinawa, but I
Well
don't know.
well, again, this has nothing to do with what we were gonna talk about today, but, I have to go back to the fortune-telling fish, Chris, because you're right. It was a cellophane, it's a piece of cellophane as far as I can tell, like a little
Yeah.
piece of plastic, and,
Mhm.
it was cut in the shape of a fish. Why a fish? We don't know, and then it would come with the instructions that would say, "If the fish curls up and does this, that means this," and they turned it into a fortune-telling thing. Obviously,
Mhm.
what it was really doing was just reacting to touching heat, and it
Mhm.
would roll up and then unroll. But I love the fact that they spun it into telling your fortune, because everything back then was telling your fortune, whether it was the psychic hotline, right? Where you have to
Completely.
spend $12 a minute to talk to somebody about, what's going to happen next. But it reminds me so much of the mood ring, right? Which is another thing that does something novelty that then they invented a story about what it really does, right? So, hey, did you guys notice that if you stick the cellophane in your hand, it curls up? Hold on a second. That is fucking genius, Ted.
Uh,
We just have to add a little extra story to it. What that is, Ted, that ain't just any piece of cellophane. That's a fortune telling piece of cellophane. Get where I'm going with this, right? Same thing with the mood ring. Hey, guys, there's this little piece of glass that has a little chemical backing to it that is thermosensitive and it will change colors. Oh, no, that's not what that is. That's a mood ring. Yeah, that'll tell you what mood you're in. Green? That means you're jealous. Blue? That means you're in a good mood. Red? I don't even want to know. Janet, get on that. What does red mean? Let's ship these fucking things. Could it be on a necklace? It could be on a necklace. Could I print it on a shirt? You could totally print it on a shirt. This is gonna fucking destroy the pet rock guy. We got to get the pet rock guy out of Sears. We gotta take back control, guys.
It's kind of like the magic 8 ball, where it's like, look, let's get this 8 ball and let's put these little answer cube in here, and they'll have different sides to it. And then you shake it up and then you ask it questions. Now, the questions have to be a certain type of question, and then you will get this ambiguous answer no matter what the question is. Decidedly so, unsure at this time, blah, blah, something that would go, yes, magic 8 ball is helping me predict the future because I'm shaking this little globe with this little cube inside that has what, a 4 or 6, how many different, different possible responses. And like I said, they worked backward from that. And genius. Like I said, we were obsessed with that for whatever reason, like whether it was the ladies on TV or crystal balls or fortune tellers, it was all about something that would tell you something that would confirm, a feeling or answer a question or tell you something that you didn't know. And the common denominator, it was all complete and total bullshit.
Yeah, but we loved it, right? And I mean, thermosensitive material that you could turn into a mood ring, that's kind of interesting. A piece of cellophane that curls up in your hand, that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
But the magic 8 ball, what you're like at a lunch break, right, at
Mhm.
some company, and you're trying to come up with the next thing, and someone brings in, I don't know, they're drinking purple Kool-Aid, right? And then someone goes, "Hey, I wonder what would happen if I dropped a little tetrahedral dice in there. Hey,
Uh-huh.
look, it fucking floats. That's an idea right there. How would you even how what? How?
Uh-huh.
Who? When?
Right. Mhm.
But then Chris, even though we all knew what it was, at
Mhm.
some point every kid had to smash that thing open just to double check, just to make sure that there wasn't a genie in there or some other type of mechanism. We all at some point, at least before we threw it out because we were tired of it, we had to break it open, and we all said the same thing. Yep, purple water and a piece of plastic. Damn it. We were all hoping it would be more than that.
Right, and there were 2 more paths we have to fortune cookies and horoscopes, right? Same thing, you got a fortune and you were like, "Oh, you will come into money." It's like, "Yes, this is excellent," right? And then your fortune, your horoscope, "Today will be an important day in your life." It's like, "Yes!" And, like, if they were bad ones, you just completely trashed them and ignored them or, just completely discarded
Yeah,
them.
that's a
But
do-over.
it was
Yeah.
just like, you wanna believe it when it's good, and, "Hey, my horoscope said something good was gonna happen to me today." It's just like, "Okay, can we be a little more vague? Because it's all in the eye of the beholder." It's like, "Hey," you could say it's like, "You didn't get run over by a bus today. I guess that was good."
Back in our day, it seemed like fortune cookies told your fortune, you know.
Mhm.
It would have been awesome if at least one time they got super specific. Don't take the number 3 gray line bus at 3 o'clock. Right? That would be fucking awesome if they would do that. They
Mhm.
never did. But
Mhm.
but nowadays, they don't even try to tell your fortune. I don't know what the deal is, but to your point, Chris, it's a wise man leads wisely. Hey, fuck you. Seriously. I want a fortune. I want to know what's happening next. I don't need just a statement, right? And then I'm supposed to figure out if it's true or not. It's just fortune cookie. Let's go back to the basics. I don't know.
Mhm.
That always bugged me. And we're going in kind of a weird order here, but now my
We
brain
are.
is really firing. I swear to God, we're going to get to this episode, you guys, in just one second. But speaking of Jeff Thill, who had to break open the Magic 8 Ball again just to double check what was inside there,
Mhm.
what other famous toy, Chris, that we had as kids, mostly guys, mostly a boy toy, at some point when you got tired of playing with it, you had to cut it open to see what the hell was in there. Can you think of what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head what I had to cut the
Stretch your mind,
Yes. Okay,
Chris.
Stretch
Really
Armstrong.
stretch it. Oh,
Stretch
wow. Good job.
Armstrong.
Good
Stretch
job.
Armstrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it turned out it's something that should never be touched by human hands. As I recall, it burned at first and then it left
The
a
birds.
rash. And if you held onto it for too long, your skin started
Mhm.
peeling and then you started to feel almost faint,
Mhm.
auditory hallucinations. And then you would you, you would start to grow odd patches of hair in that section. And am I making this up? Maybe
Well,
that was just a fever
no,
dream
but
I had. I don't know.
maybe not, but it does make you wonder how many ER visits were a result of somebody playing with Stretch Armstrong or somebody dissecting Stretch Armstrong. At the same time, it also just made me look like it was one of those toys where, again, it was like it's Stretch Armstrong, so it's like, "Hey, you grab one arm, and I'm gonna grab the other arm, and let's just pull on this thing," right? And that was it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was it. It didn't do anything else. I mean, at least G.I. Joe had, like, all of his weapons and his different fatigues, and you could throw him off your balcony in a parachute or put him in a space capsule, right? Or Action Jackson had all his cool whatever the hell you had, there was something fundamentally that you could do. What it stretch that was it. Here, let's just see if we can stretch this thing, and then maybe somebody's gonna let go and punch themselves in the eye, and there was a little humor involved in that, as long as it wasn't you, right? But what the hell what else were you supposed to so, of course, eventually, you were gonna get bored with Stretch Armstrong and see what made Stretch Armstrong tick or what made him stretch, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, and it turned out it was just some kind of maple syrup,
Mhm,
liquid. But and I love the fact too, like, what could we stick this inside of? And I think, Chris, this goes back to nowadays we have satisfying videos, right? Where you watch a video and they're slicing through styrofoam or they're
mhm,
squeezing putty and it's like, oh, or someone is edging or mowing a lawn or
mhm,
chipping away paint. You're like, oh, it's so satisfying. I think this was one of the early tactile, satisfying things because you didn't just stretch them, you could also
mhm.
squish them. And I think the squishing of it was kind of satisfying. What I never understood though is you could have done a million things with that toy, but instead they put it inside of a bodybuilder that was wearing Speedos. I didn't quite get why it had to be that. And of course, he doesn't have fingers or toes, right? They're
Mhm.
like, dude, I'm sorry, but this already costs us too much to manufacture. I can't put fingers and toes on it. It's
Or
just going to have to
clothes.
be a guy that was born
Mhm,
that was born without fingers or toes and inexplicably is wearing a Speedo.
right.
That's the most we can do.
Right, and is that supposed to be aspirational? At the same time, right? Because G.I. Joe was like a commando, or Action Jackson or all the Mego superheroes. And again, as a boy, it's like if you're girls and you're playing with Barbies and you want to be a stewardess or, whatever. Of course, they weren't at the time. It was like a housewife. That was Barbie. Unfortunately, the bar was not set very high at the time. But it was like, what what do you aspire to? You wanted to be the $6 million man. It's like, yes, you got all mangled when you became a cyborg and you were like, and you became even better than you were, better, stronger, faster, right? But what the hell? What are you supposed to be? Yes, to your point, Jeff. I'm this guy with no clothes, no pants, right? And no fingers and toes. But guess what I can do? I can stretch to a certain degree. I can stretch and then that's all I got. That's all I got. So maybe someday, kids, you can grow up to be a fingerless, toeless, pantsless, stretching dynamo. You can be Stretch Armstrong if you're lucky.
I mean, it's all any of us could ever aspire to. Well, I don't even remember what the original topic was that we were supposed to talk about today. But one thing I can tell you, Chris,
Mhm.
is the last episode when it comes to the polls that we were able to yank out of that episode and the scoring that took
Mhm.
place is very unusual.
Okay.
Let's take a quick look and then we're going to get on to some other fun topics here, which, if we still have time. So,
How we doing on time? Okay, we're okay. I just asked the I just
thank you, Chris, for talking to our imaginary producer. That's awesome. But for those of you that actually give a shit and you do want to check the score from the last episode and how it broke down, just go to
Mm,
nicepollpod.com. Like we always say, just go to the top there, click on scoreboard, and then you can scroll through the brutal details of who won. Now, Chris, this is an unusual one
mhm.
because we really did not have that many polls.
Oh.
In the last episode, we really just kind of got on a very nostalgic sort of a bender, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, that's a shout out to Bill. And we didn't do a ton of the classic, "Hey, this guy played Lumpy on Leave It to Beaver" kind of polls. It was more like creating scenarios that were from our memory back in the day, which AI does give us credit for being creative, right? And coming up
Mhm.
with weird analogies and stuff like that. So in the last episode, if we take a look right here in the liquor cabinet, Chris, we did a lot of talking about 70s and 80s nostalgia, mostly about summertime, right?
Mhm.
Getting out of school, and oh my God, it's the last day of school, and now we're all going to take a bus to the beach and do all the fun things we do in the summertime. We brought back that great feeling of hanging out, wasting away in front of the TV set, watching old reruns of Twilight Zone. We talked about for those that grew up locally here in San Diego, the awesome roller coaster that is still there to this day, a beautiful wooden roller coaster. And Chris, what is the name of that roller coaster
The
in
Big
Pacific Beach?
Dipper?
The Big Dipper,
The
right
Big
there
Dipper.
on the water. Yep. We also brought back an oldie but a goodie, Chris's dad's Texas Instruments calculator, which weighed 17 pounds. It
Uh-huh.
didn't
It's like
weigh
a
quite as
brick.
much as a cell phone back then, and
No,
it wasn't
no.
quite as radioactive, but Chris's dad loved that thing. And Chris, I never told you that my dad had a similar obsession, but his was the label maker, where
Mhm.
you would type in and click, click, click,
Dymo.
click, click, and yeah. And Chris, he was so obsessed with putting labels on things. Guess what the first thing is that he labeled? The label maker.
I think you should. I
Yeah.
don't want to. I want
Yeah.
to take 100% credit because I think you may have shared this
Yeah.
in past. I
I
think he
did.
put a
Yeah.
label on the label maker itself,
He did. He did. Yeah. And again, that's
which is just
a poll of a poll. We did talk
that
about that
is
in the past, but it is, yeah. You can't get more meta than my dad. Super fucking meta. Um,
that, yeah. I don't know what the equivalent would be. Like maybe putting a lock on a box of locks or something. You know what I mean? Because it was just like
right.
it,
Exactly.
there,
Dad, where's the label maker? What are you, a fucking idiot? Just look at the label. It's right there. How
or
could you not know what that is?
or whose label maker is this by any chance? Just so you know,
Right, yeah.
it gets mixed up with
Yeah.
anybody else's label because everybody, you know, there was always just a rash of label makers laying around. So you want to be clear that who the owner and proprietor of said label maker was.
Yeah, that's right. And it was also just so it was so weirdly obsessive where
Uh-huh.
he would also type Mike Phil and he would just own things in the house. This lamp, Mike Phil. Dad, do you it's someone coming into our house to steal the lamp, but do you have to have a label on the lamp itself? It was
Mhm,
so bizarre.
mhm.
He just sat there looking for things to label.
Well,
Anyway,
he just wanted
yeah,
to remove all ambiguity,
he
and to
did.
make sure, you know, I can give you can I have to just share a modern day equivalent because I live with this one every
Yeah.
day. I just like, okay, my wife started doing, you know, and you know how you get your kids get your school pictures, right? Every year
Yep.
they do the picture, and so she had got these early on, and she got these three like these frames that were like, you know, and with the same size, and every year, first she did this with my son, and now she's currently doing this with my daughter, where it's like every year she puts that school picture in. Okay. And like there's always three open spots. Just so no one got confused about what was coming next or coming the next year after, the kindergarten picture is up. And then what do you think is in that empty box?
a little Post-it note or some kind of a label that says reserved
Just
for,
says
you
just
know,
says first grade. Very
oh,
nicely
okay.
written, nice, almost calligraphy. First grade,
Yeah.
and then in the second box right after that,
2nd grade?
second grade.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
just to
Okay.
just to make sure there's no confusing about what's coming next. And
Right.
that went on for 9 years, and now right now we've got this last frame with my daughter for 2, before she's there's, the 6th grade picture is up. There are 2 empty sections left, and one says 7th grade.
Right, and Chris, did you ever consider, just for fun, sticking a random
Oh,
photo
yes.
in
Yeah,
there?
oh,
Like, just a picture of you eating a burrito, just stick it in there for no fucking reason at all, just so she goes, "Oh my god," and, like, you try to see how long it's gonna take before she realizes it. Do you think, Chris, that it would be the very next morning, the second that she walks out into that room? Or do you think it might actually be a few days before she realizes that there's a picture in there that is not the correct picture?
it wouldn't take long at all. It wouldn't even take that long because I think invariably the problem is with putting picture frames and all that shit together is kind of a pain in the ass, right? So it's like I probably wouldn't even get the thing put back together correctly before she found out. So I never even
Okay.
it crossed my mind, but then
Yeah.
again, I know I just hey, you don't tug on Superman's cape, right? So
No,
I kind of walk away. But your
that's
dad's
right.
spirit, it lives on. It
He
is not the
does. Yeah.
same, but in a lot of ways, it is exactly the same. And I'm sorry, I completely screwed up our scoring recap here.
No, you just reframed it.
Oh, good God. All right.
So,
I'm done. I'm out. I'm out.
what? There aren't nearly enough dad jokes on this show. God, this thing should be chock
Reframed
full of
it.
dad jokes. Yeah.
Reframed it. All right.
Oh, come
Okay.
on.
Okay. All right,
All
Dan.
right.
All right. Let's go.
All right. So,
Who won? Who won?
real
Let's just come on.
let's just go to who
Who
won.
won?
Chris, I only had 4 polls, which is
Okay.
pretty pathetic, and they weren't even amazing polls. It was really just me getting kind of creative. I talked about 6th grade camp and how weird it was when I was a kid, because I imagined that I was in a living version of Hogan's Heroes and that I was actually a prisoner of war, right? And I was trying to get past the camp counselors who were guards, right? Because I love that show, Hogan's Heroes. Very strange for me to think that as a kid. Maybe that's a therapy session for later. We talked about Cub Scouts and how gung ho I was with Cub Scouts, and how much I really loved getting that uniform that first day at Sears. Again, I don't know what my problem is. I really don't. I just
Well,
really love
I
to
have an
dress
idea.
up and listen to musicals. Um, then we
Well,
talked about my experience at Jack in the Box by Pacific Beach, which of course we all remember that growing
gotta
up
be
here in
getting
San
hungry.
Diego, and how cool it was when you were younger
Mm.
and you would run into somebody that maybe you had a crush on, and it was a few years later and they hadn't seen you in that long. So now was your opportunity to basically be the cool guy, right? Oh, that
Mhm.
person that you knew 3 years ago, that's a very different version of me, right? And that cool feeling of like, "Hey, this is the new and improved Jeff Dill. How you doing?" Right? Um,
Mhm.
that was a fun memory. And then, of
Mhm.
course, I love how AI wrote this. Punching equals learning lessons. That was just a comment I made about the 70s, which is
Uh-huh.
sometimes you just have to punch somebody, right? And you learn what's going to happen next. And for me,
Mhm.
that happened quite a bit. Now, if we go to Chris's polls, I loved his little lesson was don't say the word bored or you will be cleaning the mother effing garage, right? Oh my
Mhm.
God, do we all remember that?
Yep.
Chris's dad didn't label things the way my dad did, but he did label things. He put not the expiration date, he put the date of purchase on
Yes.
everything in the house. And Chris literally had like an Aunt Jemima syrup tracking system. So the dad could go, "Who the hell is eating all the syrup? We just
Exactly.
bought this 2 months ago,"
Uh-huh.
which is just so next level. Um, we
Start
Chris brought
monitoring the
up
syrup. Yes.
you brought up the fact that in Cub Scouts, we had all kinds of other concerns like the soapbox derby. Oh my God, the soapbox derby, Chris. Great recollection. Except when my brothers were in Cub Scouts, they would build a real soapbox that a kid could get in and have a real
Mhm.
derby. With us, it was just a little balsa wood one that fit in the palm of your hand. It just was a more economically minded version of the Cub Scouts. Great
Mhm.
memory though. But Chris, the one that really pushed you over the edge, we talk a lot about Brady Bunch. We talk a lot about Cousin Oliver. but I could not for the life of me know that that guy's name was Robbie Wrist, and you did. So I think
Oh,
that one really pushed you over the edge. So, Chris, let's take a look at the final score. Here we go. I knew the Robbie Wrist obviously was going to push you over the edge. Um, Congratulations, man. And honestly, that one's not very close. That's about 130 some odd thousand points,
uh-huh.
Chris. You kicked my butt. You
Eh,
Robbie wristed me right into the ground. Damn it.
I think you came up with yes. On the, not on the main stage, on the backstage at Coachella day 3, the Robbie Wrist, I think would be a fine doing an acoustic show only, a special acoustic show by the Robbie Wrist, and I would be there to go see that. So,
But
um,
I think they would have to change it to Robbie's wrist just to make
maybe.
it a little extra artsy. I don't know. Who
Okay,
knows?
fine,
That band sucks anyway
fine.
since their drummer died. I never liked him. Now, one other thing, I did want to make one extra note, Chris, and I know that you are going to absolutely love this. If our
Mm.
listeners and friends of the show do go to nicepolpod.com and they go in the scoreboard section, I now have a running tally of who is winning. And Chris, right now, you are 8 wins. I am 5 wins. Chris, that's not how they say it in baseball. Why don't you say that score there because me not know understand sports much good? Why don't you for the audience tally off what that says there, Chris, the way a sports announcer might
Well,
do it?
basically, I've got a 3-game lead on you right now, is how that would be described. I've got 8 wins to your 5, which means it would take 3 wins for you just to catch up. You know, the tie part was kind of weird. We can't baseball terms. I got a 3-game lead. I'm not going to rest. I got to keep pushing. Keep the pressure on.
Yeah,
Had a bit of a losing streak there for a while. But hey, I got a 3-game lead, but it can change very quickly in less than a month, in less than month's worth of episodes, we could be tied.
yeah.
So, hey, we're not even at, actually, as you look, what, 14 times now we've been since we scored. So literally, hit 50 some episodes where we didn't have this system. So, hey, 3-game lead, and coach, we just got to, take one show at a time. Just take care of business. Keep focused and leave it all out on the field.
You can investigate all you want, but the memory is either there or it isn't. So really,
Oh,
at the end of
listen
the
to
day,
you.
it's whoever gets the most pulls by the end, that is the person
Mm,
that's going to be victorious.
right.
And furthermore, the more obscure, right? So right now we're doing a lot of practice on focusing on the obscure, and we're going to see how that runs. But you just got to take it day by day, memory by memory, and do everything you can to try to maintain those memories. Back to
Mhm.
you.
Interesting jock
Chris,
voice
was that
there.
was that was
That
that
was
pretty close to
that was
yeah,
yeah, you were
not too
kind
bad.
of yeah, you were
Yeah,
kind of a mix. You had a little, I don't know what to think in there. You had a little Tank McNamara, I think, thrown in there as
I
far
did.
as, but good, well done. Produce,
Thanks, man. And
announcer slash jock voice.
and, and Chris,
Well done.
there is an update to that score because we just now learned that it's actually Chris
Oh,
with 9
yes.
games and
4-game
Jeff
lead.
with 5 games. So you've almost, and again, Chris, I'm not going to try to freak you out with a bunch of math right now. We all know
Mhm.
that's not your strong suit,
No.
but you've almost doubled the number of wins. So I have a lot of work to do. On this episode, I had better start kicking ass and coming up with some pretty obscure references in order to even have a chance of besting you. But speaking of which, Chris, why don't you tell us what in the hell we're going to be talking about next on this episode? Now that the episode has 4 minutes left.
When we were growing up, 70s slash 80s, the films and the TV shows that, hey, let's put a couple people together, whether it's cops or roommates or people, romantic, a guy and a woman and they're polar opposites and they hate each other. But guess what? Down deep, we know that they're going to get together at the end. And that whole sort of trope that, if we look back on it, goes back decades and decades and just sort of built and took on many ways, shapes, and forms. And here we are today, and it's still sort of It's still happening, and I think a lot of those formulated, again, when we were kids, all of a sudden these shows Starsky and Hutch, I'll throw that right out there.
Yep.
Starsky and Hutch. Couple of cops, a boss they're always getting in trouble with, a cool car, again, sort of opposite personalities. They both call each other by their last names. I don't even know if you knew Starsky and Hutch's first names.
Yeah, no, it for sure. And the list is not only does it go on, but you're going to hear some of them in a moment here, right? Obviously, the greatest hits of the matchups of the teams that were in a detective agency or crime fighting in some way. But let's not forget one thing about Starsky and Hutch that made it very similar to a couple other shows. You are undercover police officers. You
Mhm.
should try to be low key if you can. That's why I recommend you have a car that is bright red and has a unique white stripe down the side that comes to a point and goes over the hood so that anyone in LA
Uh,
can immediately know where Starsky and Hutch is at all time. Can you park in a back alley and try to be inconspicuous in that fucking car, the Zebra? No. No, you can't. But Chris, who else could not park and be inconspicuous? How about the van that Mr. T was driving? I think
okay.
I think we've gone over this before, but you're escaping not just the police but the military because you escaped from a maximum security stockade, but you're going to
Mhm.
drive around in a black custom van with a very Starsky and Hutch-esque red stripe down the side, and then it's going
Mhm.
to be driven by a 350-pound man with a mohawk and an obscene amount of gold chains, just to keep a low profile. I think even Dirk Benedict, the face,
Oh,
right? He drove
Spaceman.
a custom Corvette with like this very elaborate decal system on it. It's like, yeah, guys, just chill out, man. No one will ever. Where are they? Where is the A team? We can't find them. We can't find them anywhere,
Well
right?
well not only that, but they were also, like you said, they were conspicuous as hell. Like, right? Like, Starsky and Hutch if Starsky and Hutch had to go sneak up on somebody, did they park, like, 4 miles away? Right? Because, again, that stupid tomato red car, which is like, "Oh, shit, the cops are here," to your point. Um, Miami Vice, and I get this is also the part of it too. It's like I want to say that Sonny Crockett drove like it was like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or something like that, which is like, first of all, how much do they pay cops in Miami? You know, um, number one, number two, not the most not the most conspicuous, not the most inconspicuous, the most conspicuous car possible. Now, again, this is Miami, it was the '80s, and it was all pastels and, cool colors and flamingos and all that shit, but still, it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna roll up in that thing." And nobody's going to know who I am. Nobody's going to recognize me. And I could just go about my business with drug dealers or pimps or gun runners or whatever. And man, I'm going to be cool and I'm going to be undercover. But that was part of, again, the partnerships. You would throw these, like I said, like Crockett and Tubbs. Knight Rider was a partnership between what? David Hasselhoff, and who was his partner? Who was David Hasselhoff's partner, actually?
Kit,
The
Kit,
car! He didn't even have a human partner, he had a talking car. I think William
yeah,
Daniels, who was, like, from Saint Elsewhere, was, like, doing the
show
voiceover
off.
and was, like, saying shit like, "Oh, I don't know, be careful here," whatever, in the sense of, like, a talking car that he would call, in talking to Kit, having a conversation. I think he might be a little bit crazy. Now, I guess now we have talking cars. We don't have flying cars, but we do have cars that can sort of tell you shit, right? At least through your GPS or Siri or whatever.
Oh, I always thought it was an odd creative choice to make Kit's personality a total bitch. Just a snotty, arrogant, patronizing bitch of a human.
Mm.
Everything was, well, Michael, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Okay, Michael, but don't say I didn't warn you. Really? Just all the time? There's not just my God, I would have driven that car off a cliff, probably because I'm a bad driver, but I would have driven that car off a cliff long before my third adventure with it. Just honestly, just from the attitude alone. That was pretty unbearable. But I will say in defense of Miami Vice, they were supposed to get involved with drug dealers, right, and
True.
kingpins and stuff. So I do think that the Ferrari Daytona, which is the actual car that he drove, I think it was a white Ferrari
Mhm.
Daytona. See what I'm doing here,
Nice
Chris? I'm trying to
pull.
win this episode.
Whoa, nice pull.
Was given to them by the discretionary budget of the drug division at Miami PD or whatever they call it,
Mhm.
so that and I think they notoriously would damage them, right? And then they have to get another one. I think at some point they even had a Testarossa, which is kind of cool. But yeah. And by the way, how bad do you feel for the other actor? It was Don Johnson who blew up and became the world's biggest celebrity, and whoever that guy is that played Tubbs.
Philip
I just
Michael
felt so
Thomas.
bad. He's a good actor. I mean,
Okay.
it's not a very challenging role, but
Mhm.
seemed like a
Mhm.
good guy. He put his heart and soul into it, and everybody would give that guy shit, like, and
You're not
the
Don
other
Johnson.
guy. Oh my god, I felt
Well,
so bad.
but I guess also the thing is you can still mention though, okay, so we have this Ferrari, right? Or the Testarossa and the Daytona. I'm trying to drop these all too. It's like, but okay, so yes,
Too late, I already pulled it.
they were supposed to be undercover, but then wouldn't that get out eventually? Like, because once they busted somebody and the word would get out on the street, it'd be like, hey man, if somebody rolls up in a white Ferrari, they're a cop. It's like that would not be a secret that would stay secret for very long. But that either they were super efficient and kept it tightly wrapped in Miami, or people were just effing stupid. Every partnership, whether it was I don't know Felix and Oscar in The Odd Couple, right, or whether it was Crockett and Tubbs, or whether it was Sam and Diane on Cheers, or Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, right, David Addison and Maddie, whatever her name was on Moonlighting, right? It's like, but there was always one. Wasn't everybody was they all had a kit, right? There wouldn't be like you liked them equally. There was always one that you were drawn to. It's like Diane was a nag. Sybil Shepherd's character was bitchy. Felix was Felix. You all want to be Oscar. You don't want to be Felix, right? So there was always that one that even though they were partners, there was one that was sort of elevated a little bit more, that was a little bit more relatable. And the other one that, because like nobody, like I said, nobody related to Diane on Cheers. They all like Sam Malone because he was handsome and cool and cracked good jokes and and the same thing, Bruce Willis was like, hey man, he was like fast talking and caused all kinds of trouble, but still came out at the end. So it was like, it's funny. The partners, they were separate, but they were not equal.
And that really carried over into all kinds of other shows like Remington Steele, right? Where
Hmm.
Pierce Brosnan is the cool guy and everybody kind of loves him and he's awesome. And it's Stephanie Zimbalist Jr., right? Who is the
Thanks,
shrewd,
Ephraim.
smart one. And she's the one that is really running the company, but she plays second fiddle to this really charismatic character that everyone kind of loves, that has all the punchlines and all the comedy. So
Hmm.
I don't know, kind of interesting. And then when you get to Cagney and Lacey, now we're all confused. I don't know. What is that? I think most guys didn't really watch Cagney and Lacey. To be
No.
quite honest, back in the 70s, we kind of shrugged our shoulders and said, probably lesbians. I think that's mostly what was being thought at the time.
Hmm.
Maybe not said out loud, but
Uh-huh.
I feel like that might have been the case.
I never knew which one was Cagney or which one was Lacey, to be honest with you. I never knew which one was Kate or which one was Allie.
Then you had the ones where they paired up two people and it was kind of ambiguous as to which one you were supposed to like. Dukes of Hazzard, right? I would say that both of their personalities were equally annoying,
Uh-huh.
and it was really just down to a woman's choice. Do I like brunette or do I like blonde? That's all you could really. Do I Tom Woppet this thing or do I John Schneider this thing? Yeah, or a little more obscure shows, right? Like Riptide, right? Which is you got two guys. They're both Vietnam vets. They're equally likable.
Perry King, Joe
Joe
Penny. Yeah.
Penny.
Uh-huh.
I think we tied on Joe Penny. At the very least, I wiped out your poll on that one.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, two, and then I think because Revenge of the Nerds was popular back then, and we all liked nerds. Nerds was a
Mhm.
funny thing. They had the nerd. Who was like their tech guy, and I
Mhm.
think they even had a goofy little robot in the show, right?
Mhm.
And by the way, just like the shows we talked about, they did have a helicopter. This one was painted pink and it was called the Screaming Mimi. I don't
Whoa,
know why,
that is a deep
but
pull.
yeah, that is. But the helicopter pilot, I don't think had a initials nickname like, TC or whatever,
Mm,
but it was an ex-Vietnam vet
of
that flew
course.
the helicopter. So it always is right back then. You had to.
It had to be
Um,
like
I don't
Airwolf,
know.
you
Yeah,
know,
Airwolf or Blue
Blue
Thunder.
Thunder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But hey,
Mm.
I will say one thing about this episode versus the last one. I feel like there were a lot of polls this time around. What do you think? Yeah?
Quite a few polls, Jeff. Quite a
Yeah.
few polls, yeah. I mean, these partners and these people, friends, and these relationships, just like we have on this podcast. Yeah, you have to take a deeper dive. I might have to dive into the. I might have to get in deeper dive. That might have to open up a box of Cracker Jacks and ask it, or ask my magic 8 ball, or check my mood ring, and see where we go next. But till next time, Jeff.
Till next time, Chris.